Good evening and welcome to The Square. Tonight we have a very exciting discussion lined up as we discuss the regulation and promotion of the entertainment industry, entertainment sector, if you will, in Rwanda. This is more or less a follow-up to the previous conversation we had on The Square last week, a follow-up to the Visit Rwanda campaign, and we want to explore the various opportunities we can leverage from the great work that's being done to promote the tourism sector in Rwanda. And with that, we'll be discussing entertainment and the promotion and regulation of it. As always, I am joined here on The Square by our guests and panelists, and tonight joining us is the Commissioner of Police. His name is Theos Badeje. Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting police.
Thank you. He's also the spokesperson of police, as many of you know. And tonight in this conversation, we are joined with the Chief Tourism Officer from Rwanda Development Board, Belize Kariza. Welcome to The Square.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for honoring our invitation. As always, The Square is made up by four resident panelists. Starting with myself, my name is Dana Mpisi. I'm also joined by Ephraim Rwamwenge.
Hello, evening.
Good evening.
Yeah.
Bernard Namata.
Always a pleasure.
And Charles Haber.
Good evening, Diana.
Great. So before we take a deep dive into tonight's topics, I'll just give a few words, an opportunity for Charles to share a few words. That's something very close to his heart that happened this week. And Charles, if you will.
Yeah, saddened to start the week on a low. One of our national team cricketers, a young 20-year-old, was just about to get 21, passed away in a very saddening situation, fell sick for 2 days, was rushed to hospital. After a few hours was pronounced dead. He was probably the most prolific batsman that Rwanda has ever produced, broken into the ranks, first cricketer to die. Cricket is a relatively new game, so it's a very sad time. He's called Prince Uwimana Ishaka. And, you know, as the name suggests, Imana Yaramushatse, but it's a very dark time for the sports fraternity and cricket in particular. You know, may his gallant soul rest in peace. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very sad to hear that. And I'm sure the cricket game is also growing in Rwanda.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we are going to get into the thick of things, and I'm going to start my first question with you, CP Badeje. And this really is the big fat white elephant in the room. This is the noise pollution laws. And my question for you, based on entertainment, this is something that greatly affects the entertainment sector in Rwanda. The enforcement of it with a fine balance between, you know, enabling entertainment vis-a-vis, in some cases, it's been said to hamper entertainment. So my question is just, if you can give us a broad-based perspective, the basis of this noise pollution laws and the implementation of it, the procedures that go into implementing this particular noise pollution law.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you, panelists. As far as police is concerned, you know we are law enforcers. And also we are charged to make sure that people are safe. That means we are in this business in two perspectives. One, to make sure that people are enjoying safely. And also when it comes to regulation, that means there is laws, legal tools. That means we also ensure the people are compliant with the laws. So it is both of them. We make sure that there is order and also human rights. That means you can enjoy, but without disturbing someone else who is also doing something else. So that's what actually we are doing to make sure. Also, we do it through what we call the involvement of the stakeholders. We did it in the past with the churches. You know, we had also some issues with the noise pollution coming from churches. So finally, what we did, we convened meetings with the local authorities, representatives of faith-based organizations. Finally, we end up forming what we could say self-regulation. That means we are no longer going directly to churches to switch off music or people preaching, but themselves, they now understand the spirit of the law, and they put in place mechanism in the city of Kigali or other districts They have now inspection teams to make sure actually it is mixed from the administration, of course the law enforcement officers, including the members of faith-based organizations. And so far it is working. And also I think Madam Belize knows better. We had some sessions chaired by the RRDB, also inviting the entertainment industry and hospitality, also to make sure how can we enforce those laws without probably any problem in the industry, in the business. And we are still open to make sure we enforce laws, and also those members of the business are take part in the same line. So it helps not to go through any coercive forces, but instead being just around to remind, just in case there is someone who is going beyond the line. So basically that's what we are doing. And so far we think we are doing well, and for the promotion, you know, you can't have industry of entertainment without safety. And also through safety, also you can't have safety without enforced laws. So I think.
So before I ask my panelists, because they have a lot to say, you know, on the basis of this show, you also honored our invitation, but some of the things you also want to talk about are just to highlight some of the said challenges from people who are on social media, just to point them out to you and have a discussion about how to move forward from that. One I'd like to say before Ephraim, Charles and Brenna come in is, what is being said is that there's too much safety and too much security that hampers entertainment. That's the current, some of the current, you know, perception and reality for most people in the entertainment sector. And I'd like to just hear what my panelists have to say in that regard and questions they may have for you.
If I may,
Yes.
I think I'd like to give credit where it's due, first of all. There has been an evolution of the Rwandan police, and I'll say kudos to Afande Badeje and his team. About 3 years ago, when they would find a site or a place where there is music and loud music, they're very quick to unplug the equipment. Today, that doesn't happen, right? And I give them really props for that. There's improvement on that front. I'll continue to give improvements. I mean, areas where they have improved. 2-3 years ago, when they would find, again, a place where there's loud music, sorry, excuse me, they would not ask whether you actually have permission. They would confiscate the equipment and arrest the DJs.
That was
today,
3 years ago?
Yes, today that does not happen. Thirdly, and I'll give what has happened to us. On Women's Day, we had, luckily for us at our office, we have about 80%, 78% of our staff are women. So we had a Women's Day event. And we had music playing. And the officer on duty came and asked, can I see the person responsible for this? One of my directors came out, and the officer on duty asked, what time does this party intend to end? And again, I commend you for that. The fourth one that I commend, where there's been a lot of progress, is on the police roadblocks in the middle of the night. Previously, they used to be extremely militant, breathalyzing everybody, long queues, arresting, breakdowns, and all this stuff. Today, when you're driving, the police officer will stop you. He'll engage you in a conversation. You will actually realize that if you're coherent, they will let you go. And I think that is those are four very good strides in the right direction. However, we evolve, and I think the police needs to evolve alongside. My personal advice to the police is, excuse me, they need to set up a nocturnal urban squad that polices the night. And it has to be a fairly exposed elite or force or cops. Because you generally tend to find that the guys who work in the night are not very aware of what it takes to police a night. That people have to have fun.
People will let loose.
Yes, people will let loose. And I think those are some of the areas, but I will build on that flesh a little later. Yes,
Ephraim
yes.
and Berna?
I think for me, when you again, like you said, there's been a lot of improvement. The way things are done now, it's there's a bit of I don't want to call it equity, but there's a bit of consideration in understanding the context of the proprietors, or at least the event holders or the nightclub owners, and on the side of police as well. Because before, nightclub owners would be like, you guys are trying to stop us from having fun, and it becomes an issue. But again, nothing is ever perfect. Coming back to what he said, and I know he would want to build on it himself, but there's still one issue. Sometimes these police at night, they show up to these events with guns. I mean, I don't understand what the security risk is for somebody to show up to tell you about noise with a weapon.
A machine gun.
Yes, an assault rifle.
Yeah, submachine gun. I didn't have enough time to use the word sub.
A machine gun, yes.
Yeah. And I think that is, we will probably talk about it in detail, and he'll probably explain to us why they show up with guns and what the security risk is. But yeah, it's that's one area I feel, because even if the music is reduced or the party is going to continue, but they have to stop at a particular time, when police show up with guns, automatically the mood changes, and that's something that I think needs improvement.
I think that despite the progress, one of the key challenges is one, perception. No matter the progress that people are talking about, generally, if you go out there, the perception is people feel they don't have the space. Now, I don't know why, and perhaps they can tell us. Why do people still feel suffocated, even when we have progress?
And Mr. Badeje, before you answer that, the questions, of course, based all on the same thing. This is the entertainment sector. It's part of tourism. It's part of promoting Brand Rwanda. When people come to Rwanda, all these thousands of people who come from our conferences year in and year out, after 8 p.m., they need to go somewhere. They need to, go somewhere and relax.
Even before.
Even before 8 p.m. And what I want to talk about just briefly is the timing. Apparently, there's the rule that 10 p.m. Is when, if you're having a live concert, if you're having a live performance, that's not everything has to be indoors and soundproofed. 10 p.m. it has to end, number one, and number two, if we can talk a bit more on the decibel level and the measurement of decibels that people may surpass and why they're shut down.
Thank you. I think I will ask Madame Belize to elaborate on those guidelines concerning the issue of measurement of decibel, depending on areas, because it is well regulated depending on is it a residential area or business area, so it depends. So coming back to some issues raised by Charles, this issue of making a distinction between day and night policing, that's a very interesting concept you are bringing in here. So actually, ours is to enforce laws. So unless you go to lawmakers and you make a request and you know how to introduce new laws, so because for us, if it is well defined through probably the regulations of City of Kigali, for example, that unless it is a nightclub, any pub or bar should close the music beyond, say, 10 p.m. That means that's what we are doing now. police officers on night patrol, we just advise, depending on that regulations, just to comply with what is set by the law, nothing else. So how we do it, it's another business. Coming to the issue of entering in the compound with the guns. So we are moving with guns on the street. Sometimes actually it is even advised not to, as you said, not to go into houses, but we can just call someone, the manager or someone else in charge, and advise him to go into the bar and reduce the music. That's how usually we proceed. And so far, if there is any issue, we have numbers to call. People knows the number to call. If there is any abuse, we are open to intervene or just make sure everything is done properly. So I think that's how we think. Otherwise, thank you for some compliments on how we have improved. That means we have actually moving together with our people, because we are now in a business of people-centered policing. That means we are not just standing there with the guns and waiting at the roadblock to make sure we have a big number of people to put in our... No, that is not the current spirit or philosophy of policing. It's just to make sure we excel in prevention than apprehension.
I'd just like to ask, earlier you talked about protecting citizens' rights.
Yes.
Because I'm assuming this is what this noise pollution policing is about. And right now you've talked of human-centered policing. If you don't mind me asking, what specific human right is being infringed on by a club playing, and this is just a genuine question, by a nightclub playing music louder than it should and disturbing the next person? What human right is being infringed? I ask that because we also, I would ask a follow-up question about, there's the right of the entrepreneur or the business owner to set up their business and ensure that it's safe and it's clean and sanitary. But at what point do we intervene at what point does government intervene to dictate how they should run their business? And why does the rights of their neighbor supersede their own? And so my question is, what specific right is above that right of the business owner?
I'll just, as a follow-up on that one, quite often you see that the value of the phone call supersedes the law.
Yeah.
And what he means by that is most times the complaints, it's a neighbor who just says, it's 8:30,
Yes.
I can't sleep. And someone is having a gusaba.
And it depends on that neighbor.
They'll call the neighbor,
Yes.
the neighbor will call, and the police, in most cases, not most, but in cases that should not be this many, will
Yes.
come and shut you down.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's the neighbor. I think,
Yes, the
context
value of
that
the
you
neighbor.
give.
You will never hear people in Birjogo calling the police that there is too much noise. But a certain super heavyweight in Nyarutarama or Chiovu or Chimihura, super heavyweight, will call, and everybody will be up on their feet with their AK-47s to go and...
But I said
yes,
before,
yes.
actually there is regulations depending on areas. If we are in a residential area, there is that regulations on decibel you cannot exceed. That's why if you just go, actually if there is a well-organized entertainment like this Primus Gumaguma, police only receive letter from the authority that you have, for example, allowed music, concert to be, for example, at the square on premature area. If, for example, it is where the city of Uchigari has given authorization for someone to perform in that place, police only get a copy. That means we know it should be this particular area, and it starts at 6 and at midnight. That's only what we do. Of course, we are around not only for the noise pollution, but also for the safety of the people attending the performance. So basically, the mandate of the police is really open, not only limited to noise pollution, but also for the make sure that there is order and safety. Yeah.
I think we're going to come back to this issue a lot. I'd like to hear from Belize, who's been quiet. Before we go to elements of promoting the entertainment sector from an RDB perspective, is there something you'd like to add also on these noise pollution laws vis-a-vis entertainment in Kigali?
All right, thank you very much. And indeed, Afande Badege mentioned it. 2 years back, we sat down with RNP, the city of Kigali, some members of the private sector, members of the church, and we were talking about this particular issue of noise pollution. And we came up with a compromise. Because the topography of Kigali is a bit complicated, you know. You get, you know, a bar that just is established in a residential area. You know, you get a club that is established in a residential area. So we had to come up with a compromise, and the compromise was, look, in the weekdays, if you don't have a soundproof establishment and you want to play music, you can play it until 10 p.m. If the police gets a call, you know, then they'll have to inform the caller that, you know what, we hang on it, because at 10 p.m. those people have the right to do so. During the weekend, without soundproof, the compromise is till midnight. So of course, and again, it goes back to the topography of Kigali. It's a very complicated scenario it's a very complicated situation to actually look into saying, you know what, we're going to zone, you know. It's in the master plan, yeah, but right now, the situation we have right now, it's a very complicated matter. Hence, this noise pollution compromise or regulations. The way they're enforced, that's another question. So it also goes back to a tourism law. We have a tourism law that was established in 2014. And one of the key requirements for clubs and nightclubs, bars, is to have a soundproof system. Again, it's work in progress. Yeah, the law was established in 2014. There are some bars that have been, established 10 years and 15 years back. So going back to the investor and telling him you also have to invest in a soundproof system. It's also it's work in progress. It's education. It's making them for them to understand that it's a requirement, and you cannot get a tourism license, operator license, if you don't have this. So as far as RDB is concerned, we've done a lot of workshops and sensitization for these particular members of the PSF to make them understand that this issue of noise pollution will be resolved, of course, with them investing more on the soundproof system, and of course to abide to this noise pollution regulation. So it's really not black and white. It's very difficult to say, you know what, police should do that, or RDB should do that, or the investor should do that. Yeah, so that's my take on this.
Brenna wants to say something.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, I just wanted to ask, how do you come up with the timing? Because if you're saying 10 p.m. or midnight, because we are looking at a 24-hour economy, which means you have people who start work probably at 7 p.m. and who should be working till 6 a.m. or even 7 a.m. So if the benchmark is 10 p.m. or midnight, where does this leave the business plan for this person who is, one, employing people who should be working till 7 a.m.? How do you come up, with the time? Since given the business plans for most of these people, if you have a bar, it should be open till probably 10 a.m. But if the provisioning is within 10 p.m., midnight.
Again, we're talking about here the noise pollution. Yeah? So if you go to a bar, we've all been to bars, there are so many things to do. Loud music to a certain level is not the only factor that makes you go to a bar. That's number one. There's drinking, there's eating, there's hanging out with friends, right? So those are elements of going out to a bar or to a nightclub. How we ended up with the timing was really a trial and error thing. You know, there's really nothing that we could say that we benchmarked ourselves on. We just said, look, saying 8 p.m. is unreasonable. You know, 9 p.m. How about we go to 10 p.m. again as a compromise? And then of the weekend, we ended up with midnight. So there was really nothing. I can't say that there was something, quote unquote, that we followed. Yeah, so the issue here is how Kigali is established. You know, how permits are given in terms of establishing bars and establishing restaurants or establishing nightclubs. And that is a thing even before 2014 when the tourism law was not established yet. So this is something that we're going to go fixing, you know, step by step.
So
I think the next step, sorry.
Maybe it should be starting from midnight and not 10 p.m.
Or maybe
The
10 p.m. until 2
Yeah.
a.m.
You know.
Maybe 10
Yeah.
to 2 a.m.
Yeah.
As it is
Yeah.
internationally.
Yeah.
2 a.m. You know,
Sorry, Ephraim, if I may, just before I lose this point. We have invested a lot of money in our tourism campaign. Visit Rwanda is just one of those. The same way Belize says that in 2015, they did not anticipate, there was no precedence for saying 10 p.m. on weekdays or midnight on weekends. Is in the same way that Rwanda Convention Bureau was not yet established at the time. We had not yet established MICE tourism as our priority tourism strategy for the next X number of years. Now we've just invested a lot of money in Visit Rwanda. So, in my opinion, RDB has two options. To revisit the Visit Rwanda campaign and say Visit Rwanda from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. or go back to the law and say that 10 p.m. and midnight is not going to work. Yes.
So maybe let me answer you. So the campaign is not when we're saying Visit Rwanda, we're not saying Visit Rwanda just come to a bar. No, it's Visit Rwanda on a global, at an ensemble in terms of a country. You know, there's so many things to do in Rwanda other than going to a bar. Yeah. So I think it's not fair, you know, to the people who work tirelessly on this particular campaign to say that now you should say no, Visit Rwanda only between this time and
But
this
it
time.
is unfair to the multi-millions
Then-
of people who watch football. Remember, it is football.
Let me
That is
finish.
yes.
Let me finich.
Yeah.
So
and we're going to a break soon, so be quick.
Yeah,
Okay,
the
I'll
other
let
thing,
you talk.
the other thing that you need to know, right, is this entertainment industry that we're talking about generated in 2017 $62 million. That's 0.5% of our GDP, contribution to our GDP. So it's working, yeah. So I think to say that the industry, the entertainment industry is
So you're
not
comfortable
growing.
with the 62
So you're
million?
comfortable, exactly.
We're not comfortable with that, but it was because, of course, we want to grow the tourism revenues to 800
And it's actually
million.
very far from the target.
You're
So
not going to
if
go the
anything,
tourism targets
You know,
Wait,
to 800 million
wait a minute. Let me finish. So,
with people sleeping at 10 p.m.
but that's not the only contributor to 800 million. There's so many other contribution to 800 million. Like you said, in 2014, we had the MICE strategy, and that was a priority for the government. And then even in that MICE strategy, the priority, again, in terms of implementation, was the M and the C, meetings and conferences.
And now
You
we're
will
moving
note,
to
you will not, yeah, you will note that the I, which is incentives, and the E stands for events, is also something that we're going to tackle now. Yeah. So we've been attending fairs, we've been promoting Rwanda as a MICE destination, we've been attracting conferences and meetings. Now is the time to focus on events. Yeah. So what is it that we need to do to attract this big concert? What we need to do to produce a conducive environment, you know, in Rwanda, to ensure that these artists, you know, whether international artists or local artists, can thrive in Rwanda. And it's step by step, yeah? We didn't have the convention center. We had the convention center particularly because we needed to improve on this image of Rwanda as a MICE hub for East Africa. Maybe we need to create a theater. Maybe we need to create special venues for entertainment. You also know that we have a project of Kigali Culture Village, where we have we establish an environment for artists to come and perform. We have an amphitheater, you know, external and internal. We'll have huts where you can go and experience the culture aspect of Rwanda. So there are a lot of things to be done. And I don't believe that Rwanda is not fun. You know, we always hear that Rwanda is boring or Kigali is boring. It's not.
And that's the problem.
No, it's not.
And that's the problem.
No, it's not.
The perception is the problem.
But I'm sure you hear that
How
from
do you-
Rwandans themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
How do you deal with the perception?
Yes.
Because it's a problem.
But it starts with us.
Belize-
We start with
Belize
us. We're
and-
all Rwandans, right? Start with you. You know, you're Rwandan. We're all Rwandans. Start with breaking that
And many
think
are
you're
coming
missing
to
the
Rwanda
issue.
because it's safe
think-
and peaceful, and you can
I
do
think you're
whatever you
missing
want
the
without
issue.
any interruption.
The issue is, how do you address the perception? Because we are saying, as much as there's so much work that is happening,
The perception needs to change.
yes, the perception, if you go online, is, you know, it's not as free. And we're saying, how do you address the perception?
Can we come back to that, Belize? We need to go
Sure.
for a break. Ephraim, just very quickly before we go to the break. I know you've been holding in
Very
something.
quickly,
Yes.
the stuff I have to say.
Or ask it and then we'll get back to it
I'll
after the
just
break.
say, no one, there are two things, but the first one is, no one has answered my question, what right are we protecting by addressing this noise pollution issue? Once we understand what right we're protecting, we'll understand whether it supersedes all these other things that we're saying are being hampered by that. That's one. Two, where did this noise pollution issue come from? I'll tell you where it came from after the break, but when you actually analyze where it came from, you realize, back to this right that we're talking about, that it's a cat and mouse game that we're playing. We actually, it's a chicken and egg scenario where people don't actually know what the problem is, but we just keep talking about things that don't actually address it.
Okay. We'll be back after the break. More of this conversation after the break. Please stay tuned. Welcome back to The Square. Tonight we are talking about the regulation and promotion of the entertainment sector in Rwanda. Is there too much safety that actually hampers entertainment or not, or vis-a-vis? This is some of the things that we're discussing here with the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Thios Badeje, and Chief Tourism Officer from Rwanda Development Board, Belize Kariza. But before we got to the next question, Ephraim, there's something important you wanted to ask regarding the noise pollution laws.
This egg chicken. So, do you remember the first time noise pollution became a topic of discussion? It actually started with churches, and he started talking about it, faith-based organizations. And then after they started implementing it with the churches were like, why are you only coming to us? Also, the bars are also making noise. You go to them. Then it became a thing where the police then went to the bars. But the people who lodged the first complaints, maybe I'm wrong and he'll correct me, but the people who lodged the first complaint of the churches were people who were sleeping in on a Sunday in the morning, and church was making too much noise. So the reason I'm saying
These are the people who went out the night
and
before.
the ones, my point exactly. So that's what I'm saying, it's an egg chicken, because the same people, it's a double-edged sword. The same people who complained and said churches are making too much noise are now facing the fire, because the clubs that
They're not going out.
people are pointing
Still.
fingers. But I was saying this because it comes back to that question of the right. Are we protecting the right for people to sleep, enjoy their bed? Are we enjoying people? I keep asking this question because I want to know, what right are we protecting? As a citizen, I'd also like to know what right the police are protecting by enforcing this noise pollution law. I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah, I think next time you invite a member of parliament and
Absolutely.
probably someone from
that's a very good point.
Someone from the National Human Rights Commission.
No, coming back to what you have just mentioned about where comes this issue of noise pollution. We even remember, not only from the churches, but also people running nightclubs. They used to complain, people running similar business in the bars, pubs, they were transforming into nightclubs evening time. That means you are not investing in soundproof, but around midnight you just open music and people will just come in your bar and avoiding to go into
The
nightclubs. So that means we are in a regulation period. We make sure there is laws and enforcement. And as we have mentioned, I think what we can expect from the lasting solution will be the implementation of the master plan. Yeah. Because if you have a bar and adjacent to boarding school, there will be always problem of how you can, both of you, run your business. That's why you understand police is always intervening or calling in to make sure there is that cohabitation. She has mentioned the issue of compromise, because we don't have a certain area designated for music, other for the this kind of hospitals, schools. So there is still a mixed. That means we have to make sure there is always that compromise to make sure everyone run his own business without interference.
And I like how you said, next time maybe we should have a conversation with parliamentarians because, as you said, the police is just there to enforce. But maybe we'll have to revisit this law with the evolution of the country's tourism sector, with the country's entertainment, and maybe make it a bit more flexible. Maybe that's another conversation different stakeholders should be having as a country. But Belize, I'll come to you, and I'm sure we're going to go back to this topic of noise pollution. But I want to get to you with the perspective of Rwanda in terms of entertainment. So I'll just read very quickly. This is from the Entertainment and Media Outlook 2017 to 2021 by PricewaterhouseCoopers PwC, an African Perspective report that was released last year. It stated countries like Kenya earned $2.1 billion from the entertainment industry in 2016, which is forecast to hit $3.2 billion in 2021. Tanzania's total entertainment and media revenue stood at $504 million in 2016, but is set to more than double to $1.1 billion in 2021. Now, also, as Rwanda, from an entertainment and media perspective, as you will, what do you think we can do to reach similar numbers, which is me asking you to go in depth to what you were telling Charles, working with the various stakeholders. There's RCB, there's RDB, there's the community of artists, there's the Rwanda National Police, the city of Kigali. But moving forward, because I think this is something we need to tackle with equal measure in terms of how we tackled, wildlife, everything from the gorilla trekking to the eco lodges and so forth and so on. In cities, in small city towns in Rwanda, starting with Kigali, what do you think needs to be done so we can move together as a team?
All right, thank you. Like I said earlier to Charles, I gave him a bit of some data that we have. So in 2017, this particular sector generated $62 million US. Of course, yes, it's not enough, and there's room to grow on that one. But we also need to note that, like I said earlier, that it's been growing at a very impressive rate, 5% on a yearly average rate. And in 2015, I think we actually looked at the highest score and highest record in terms of increase. We reached 14%. And we think it's because of the immediate effect of the MIND strategy that we put in place, and then the fact that we attracted quite a number of events in 2014 and in 2015. So to answer to this question of what we can do better, I think it's to it's actually to continue what we're doing. We've just launched this Visit Rwanda campaign, and of course, is the mindset again is to change the perception, because we have the perception you're talking about is a small number, you know. I'm sorry, it's a small number. It's the local people, and then maybe it's the region. But when we're talking about perception, one of the main issues that we face when it comes to Rwanda, when you talk to international tour operators, when you come to tourists, the first thing they say, oh, you're from Rwanda, oh, Hotel Rwanda, oh, the genocide, you know. So that is the first perception that we needed to break, you know. We just need to go step by step. So I think that is actually working. You know, Visit Rwanda has proved to be very, very, very successful. Recently, one of the tweets actually tweeted about that perception aspect, and she said that she met a gentleman who asked her, "Oh, you're from Rwanda," and he really got excited. It's like, "Oh, I'm an Arsenal fan, you know, and I love the fact that you associated yourself with Arsenal. I'll be traveling to Rwanda very soon." We've got a lot of tour operators that really got interested because of the fact that we associated ourselves with Arsenal. So if we're able to break that perception that we have, you know, about Rwanda, you know, in the world, in the Western world, that's already something that we're doing really great. The second thing is the MICE. You know, the MICE strategy is something that we're looking into promoting even further, promoting Rwanda as a destination that can host events and conferences, meetings and conferences. But right now, since 2014, we were focusing on those two aspects.
Meetings and conferences.
Meetings and conferences. That's why we have a lot of investments that was put into place for that particular purpose. You know, the convention center, establishing Rwanda Convention Bureau, having the KCV, having a cultural village in KCV, the infrastructure. There's so many things that we had to invest as government of Rwanda to have a conducive environment for hosting those conferences and those meetings. So now the next step, like I said earlier, is to look at the incentives, and particularly the events. Again, for the events, there's so much to do, you know. There's
and entertainment falls under events.
And entertainment falls under events.
Dana,
Yes.
before Belize drives us towards predominantly PR conversation for RDB, I think before you go into all those huge capital investments, and I'd like to give an example, I've given it before, of what RDB did in as far as doing business is concerned. When we wanted to improve our doing business rankings, we went to all the other stakeholders. National Land Center, what it was called at the time, City of Kigali, building permits and all that, and what have you. And you spent a lot of time and effort in influencing laws and changes and driving regulations towards that direction, and it worked. You don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Exactly.
Go back to the stakeholders, the City of Kigali. Go to Afande Badeje and his bosses and tell him that clubs and lounges, it's not unique to Rwanda that clubs are suffering because of lounges. The statistics that Diana gave of Nairobi and Kampala, go to Nairobi today and see how many nightclubs are there. They have almost literally closed, majority of them, because of the lounges and bars. That is the natural trend of the world. Go to the City of Kigali and tell them this theory of Chimichanga being an entertainment hub, they will have a fight with Rema because it's near a swamp. You know, so go back to the stakeholders and tell them, for us to drive these figures, I think probably Ms. Claire Kamanzi, Dr. Marie Chantal Rakazina, and General Emmanuel Gasana need to go into one room and fight. Then, after fixing it, let them tell us that this is how it is going to be done. Because in as far as I'm concerned, and as far as that perception that Bana was talking about, it is because the stakeholders do not look at things in the same way.
Exactly.
That's the institutional coordination.
Yes. Afande
about.
Badeje has a very, very simple way of explaining it. It is the law, I will enforce it. Yes. So you can't shoot the messenger.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes. So I think that's what needs to be.
And Belize, isn't this something that you think can be put in the pipeline?
Yeah, so thank you. Although you cut me while actually I was not doing a PR, just stating facts, you know, things that we...
No, you're protecting your job. You're really protecting your
not
job,
protecting
which
my
is
job.
extremely
I'm not
important.
actually talking about what happened. You know, it has nothing to do with PR, has nothing to do with protecting my job.
It is okay
But,
to do PR.
It's fine. It's fine.
But
Belize, carry on. Just carry on.
back to what you were saying. Indeed, there needs to be that institutions coordination between all the different stakeholders, and it actually has started. But we did it a bit differently. We started actually the day before yesterday, and it has nothing to do with this show. You know, it happened before even me
It
knowing.
has nothing
that,
to do with the MTN party that was closed over the weekend.
The one with the
No.
Senegalese
Yeah,
artist.
it has nothing
Was
to
it
do
an
with the
MTN?
Bel Air function,
Yeah.
diaspora
What
function.
was-
one thing that you need
What
to know.
triggered the meeting of the day before
And it's okay
yesterday?
for it to be triggered by that.
What triggered it is the fact that, you know, I got personally a lot of complaints, you know,
Yeah.
from the private sector,
Okay.
from artists, that this is unacceptable. We should not continue like that. There was that
Which is
example
good that
of
you
the
listen.
Bel-Air, yeah?
And that was a violation of
And the
rights.
first thing that they requested is like, we need to meet someone. You know, we need to do something with someone from the government, a senior official, so that we can voice our concern, our frustration. And I met them. There were artists, there were promoters, there were event managers, etc. And they listed a couple of challenges that we're facing in Rwanda. One of them, of course, is the noise pollution. The other one is the fact that we don't have venues for hosting these kind of events, whether it's concert, etc. The third one, which I think is also very important, is that there is no clear procedure on how to get permission from the city of Kigali. How do we do it? How long does it take? Because there was also an issue of timing. You know, if you want to do a successful event, to plan a successful event, you have to do it ahead of time. If you need sponsors, you have to do it ahead of time. If you need to communicate, if you need to do some marketing, you need a lot of time. So all of those things actually are not actually a prerequisite. What is a prerequisite is getting the permission from the city of Kigali. So those are the things that we gathered from that meeting. And then the next step, of course, is to put together some sort of a brief for them, for the stakeholders that you just mentioned, to understand the impact that this is having on the economy overall. Yeah, you mentioned the report, but there's also another report that that Visa actually results from the Visa card, and they were comparing the spending, when consumers spent mostly in Kenya and Uganda, and they realize it's between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m.
Yeah.
So what happens at those hours? So it's cabs, it's bars, it's restaurants, etc. So there is a valid point. There is a valid reason why we should be promoting having a flexible environment for nightlife and these artists to thrive.
Ephraim and Brenna, very quickly,
So-
because
so-
we haven't yet gone to Twitter.
I know.
This
and we don't have
conversation is
much-
very exciting. So
No,
if you can just quickly-
I would say this, and in as few words as possible. You see, the main issues why those artists came to you was because an event was closed down. Why? Because of noise. Let me be honest.
And noise pollution.
I agree with Charlie to a certain degree that people need to get into a room and fight it out. But let's be honest. I told you where this noise pollution thing started from. Let the citizens solve it by themselves. Those who go to church have to accept that at a certain time on the weekend, people are going to be playing music.
Ephraim, you know that will never happen.
No, wait. And then those on Sunday morning
Yeah.
have to accept
The churches.
that the churches are going to play.
I
And
actually
we
like
love
the way
chapter.
Ephraim is thinking. And I will...
Brenna, but
please allow me
Brenna-
interrupt, because this Badeja, I think Afande Badeja is the best person to answer this. In as far as security is concerned, would it be difficult for the National Police to implement Ephraim's idea?
Meaning to let
Guaranteeing security.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
But
just to create environment where everybody can do.
Yes, if you want to
whatever he or she
pray,
wants.
pray. If you want to dance, dance.
We'll give you security,
Yes,
but
yes.
we won't say
We'll,
it's
we'll
noise
guarantee
pollution.
your security in whatever
because
environment.
they're both complaining about each other. Saturday
noise.
evening,
Yes.
Sunday morning.
I'm not sure we have that time to do this kind of experience, yeah? Because, you know, we are very sure this is one of the sensitive area, yeah? Because we have to put a clear line between freedom and order. That's that line between freedom and order. And I think next time I will take two of you night patrol.
Especially
Charles will be one of the two. Probably Charles and Fred, no, Bernard. Yeah, and actually, before if there is any planned session, we can just spend 3 hours after midnight. Let's say Friday. Then we shall have the common understanding.
Can we also go with the decibel meter? Because the decibel is a conversation we need to have.
Exactly.
How you measure.
That's also is the area we have to understand.
Yes.
Actually, we next time even call someone like a physician to tell you the impact of that noise on the disruption of sleeping or even on hearing. It's scientific.
Let's also call a revenue authority officer and say the impact of that noise on the national coffers.
But there's also the But Belize, sorry, Bernard, please, very quickly. We have 3 more minutes left.
I just feel that since we can clearly see we are being forced to work backwards in terms of policy, you know. Going forward, perhaps we should try and do our homework. Right now, if you look at global trends, we are looking at 24/7, okay? And if you're
24/7 activity.
Yes, and this shouldn't be limited to conferences or official work. Someone may decide to come from London and they're coming to Rwanda on holiday and they will do that from Monday to Sunday. Do we have an economy that can accommodate them and not limit them to 10 p.m. to this?
But we will get there.
Yes,
we will get there. In 2000, for instance, we didn't have the meetings, we didn't have conferences, yeah? But
you didn't have targets of $800 million.
Exactly, but we're there now, you know? So that's what I was telling you, that it's work in progress, you know? We realize that the global trend is 24/7.
And perhaps we should start with key targets for entertainment. Right now, we have tourism. Can we just have and say we are targeting 1 billion from entertainment, and maybe that will get us to address issues around entertainment?
Absolutely. Just very quickly, closing remarks from Belize and CP Badeje. In your words, just closing remarks about this conversation. What do you think is the way forward? We need to marry entertainment and security, but we need to do it that is a reflection of where we're going as a country. This 800 million is what we want to get in a couple of years, and we're going to get them through this particular revenue stream.
Yeah,
But very quickly, in your words,
stick on our vision and the mission to make sure people in Rwanda are safe and to create a neighboring environment for business, and to make sure everyone gets his the rights he or she deserves depending on activities. And we all know the importance of law and order, and you can't have safety without law enforcement. So actually, but also we would like to receive those feedbacks, because we know we can't satisfy the people we serve without getting feedbacks. There is always room for improvement.
Belize, very quickly.
Thank you. I think just to complement Badege is that we realize that it's a gap. We still have a gap, and we still have, business-wise, there is still a gap in terms of growing the entertainment industry. But like I said earlier, it is something that we're looking into very seriously. How do we make sure that even the meetings and conferences delegates, when they get here, what do they do?
Exactly.
So it's something that we're looking into very, very seriously. And like I said earlier as well, is we've started. Yeah, we've met with players in the industry. We're going to meet the different stakeholders. We're going to try and fix all these things so that the perception that you were talking about is going to be changed, is locally and internationally. But again, it's work in progress.
Thank you very much. We've come to the end of the show. It's been very enlightening discussion. And I really like what Afande Badeje and CTO Belize said. This is a work in progress. It's 2018, and we are now looking at various strategies to make sure the entertainment industry contributes significantly to this country's economy. And this is a conversation I'm sure we're going to have over a long period of, extended period of time. And it's good to see that there are actually inroads being made, meeting with members of the public sector, artists, and now the next step is to meet with policymakers, and hopefully even to the level of parliament, where we can review laws if need be, to make sure that we really leverage from these opportunities. It's been a pleasure having you all, as always, and thank you for joining us behind your screens at home. Please join us next week. Thank you and have a good night.